Now your questions, please. Yes, sir.
So, step into the other part of the debate. What you're suggesting is that performance makes a difference. So if we pay the best hedge fund people, ridiculous amounts of money, should we pay teachers different than a flat salary schedule?
I'll repeat the question. I want to make sure I understood it. You're saying what I'm saying is performance makes a difference. So if we pay hedge fund managers unbelievably $1 billion because they've done what? They have not performed. In fact, if anything, over the last 3 years, many of those people who are earning millions and billions of dollars have actually built their investors. I hope teachers are not paid on that basis. You're asking the inverse question, which is, shouldn't we behave not like Wall Street, but shouldn't we develop ways of measuring performance and pay for performance? And I think that here again, the debate we are having in many states is almost beside the point, because I don't know anybody who objects to pay for performance. The question is, how do you measure, and who's doing the measuring? I mean, if everybody had confidence that the measures were correct, they were really correlated to education, and if everybody had confidence that the people doing the measuring really knew what they were doing, and if everybody had confidence that the entire system of performance-based pay was really going to improve education and be fair, who would object to it? I don't know anybody who would object to it. But it's in those details that you've got some interesting and important and perplexing problems. So instead of debating, do you want pay for performance, we ought to be debating those details. Yes?
You've argued pretty compellingly that the Great Recession is going to require investment in education and infrastructure. I agree, and I imagine most of the people here agree, but path forward, where to invest, how much to invest, isn't as clear. As a parent, that for me is the key. How do we move forward? Where do we make those investments?
The question is, if one way out is to invest in education and infrastructure, because as I said, those are the unique assets we have. Everything else is footloose. How do we know how much to invest? Well, that's related to the previous question. That is, if we understood better and had more faith in ways of measuring what we want, then we would know that we want to invest until, in logical economic terms, the return on the investment basically is no better than the return on any other investment. The problem is that we can't do it quite that easily. All I have confidence in saying is that we have a lot of data showing that early childhood education, for example, is a huge positive investment, that every dollar we invest there, we get back $7 or $8 or $10 in social benefits, and not only individual benefits. We also understand, and most of the studies show us, that smaller classrooms, particularly in elementary school, do pay off. We also understand that smaller schools basically do a better job because, after all, teachers and principals and others keep on seeing the same students, and there is more sense of community and responsibility. We also understand that, unlike 30 or 40 years ago, when we had state public institutions of higher education where tuitions were very low, where middle class and lower middle class families could afford community colleges or a four-year college, today they can't. Yes?
How do we, in this tough time, avoid leaning toward magical solutions to educational problems like, like charter schools, cultural innovation?
He's on that edge. He's in a terrible spot. I mean, my thing's dropping in and out. Right there. Yeah, when he's on this edge, I'm right.
How do we avoid, in this era of tight budgets, getting mesmerized by easy solutions that actually don't work? And you use the example of charter schools. I think we need to be open to innovation and experimentation. I think that it's very important for educators, just like everybody in every other industry and every other facet of the economy, to be open and looking for ways of innovating and not to be closed-minded. But by the same token, I think it's very important to be sensible about what innovations and measure what innovations seem to be working and what seem to be not working in terms of educating our young people, developing some performance measures that may bear some utility. With regard to charter schools, we've got to be careful that we're not simply cream skimming, that we're not simply allowing certain kinds of schools, whatever they're called, maybe not charter, to take students who are the least problematic and then show that they are doing a wonderful job, because the most problematic have been left behind in the public schools. It's all the way in the back.
A statement I'm constantly responding to is,
I'm sorry, statement on
a statement I'm constantly responding to is, we're out of money, there's less money, you gotta learn to make do with less. And I think you laid out pretty clearly that that's not true. The distribution of income is going to the top and staying there. And what strategies do we need to start, what do we need to do to start getting that money into infrastructure, into education, into jobs that is there?
Yeah, the question is, if you really want to tackle what is now a record maldistribution of income in terms of the top, this year, by the way, the same economists who looked at income tax returns and found that in 2007, the top 1% were taking 23.5%. Those same economists have made some preliminary estimates for 2009, and they find that the top, preliminarily, now don't go to the bank with this, but preliminarily, the top 1% are actually up to a quarter, 25% of national income. Now, the last time we saw income this skewed, with the top 1% getting over 23.5%, was 1928. You know what happened in 1929? And a man named Mariner Eccles. Anybody know Mariner Eccles? Put up your hand if you know Mariner Eccles. He's in the book. Yes, he is in my book. He read my book. I'm so flattered. Mariner Eccles was the head of the Federal Reserve Board from 1934 to 1948, and the Federal Reserve Board building is named after Mariner Eccles. Mariner Eccles, looking at the Great Depression, concluded that the reason we had a Great Depression was because income and wealth became so concentrated at the top by the late 1920s that the middle class and working class didn't have enough money left to purchase all the goods and services that were being produced without going deeper and deeper and deeper into debt. And that debt bubble bursts. Well, there are parallels. The argument I make, and have been making for the last 6 months on the basis of all of this data, to very wealthy people, is that you will do better with a smaller share of a bigger and growing economy than you will with a large share of an economy that's anemic. But I go beyond that. I say you will also do better with a smaller share of a rapidly growing economy that generates a positive politics than you will with a large share of an anemic economy that is generating an angry and resentful politics. Because every time in American history when we've had a large number of Americans economically insecure, frustrated and angry, we have fomented a politics of resentment, a politics that is isolationist, xenophobic. Remember Smoot-Hawley in 1930? Remember the anti-immigration crusades of the early 30s? You remember anti-Semitism? We now are anti-Islam. I mean, it's not as if we haven't been here before. I mean, look at the 30s, look at the 50s. I mean, anybody who understands American history and economics and politics in America has got to look today and see that we are in danger of moving in many of the same directions. So what I say to the people who are in the top 1% is, not only do you have an economic interest in terms of a smaller share of a rapidly growing economy, but you are going to lose out potentially to the forces of isolationism and xenophobia, because that means a smaller economy for all of us and a bitter politics.